What's up, Mike? How you doing, brother? All right, so this week in the never-ending battle to get through all of these movies that I buy, I only managed to watch 4 movies. One of which was streaming, and I don't actually own it yet. So, let's get into it. These are the horrors I've seen. You messing with me? Nice. As always, I hope everybody out there is doing well and staying safe. All right, so yeah, only 4 titles this week. I've had somewhat of a hectic week, and like I said, only managed to get to 4 movies. The first of which was not a horror movie at all. I finally sat down and watched The Many Saints of Newark.
Newark.
After Tony Sirico passed away, I started watching a bunch of Soprano stuff, and then it dawned on me that I had not watched The Many Saints of Newark yet.
Newark.
So, my thoughts on that movie are, it was really cool to see a lot of the background story of all of the main players that appeared in The Sopranos, for the most part. A little bit, some more than others, but the main story here did not revolve around our main characters of The Sopranos as much as it revolved around one of the characters' fathers, Christopher's father in The Sopranos. And it was really cool to see James Gandolfini's son. What the hell's his name? Don't remember his name. And I'm not going to look it up now. First name I can't remember. Is it Michael? Or is it Mike? Michael? Sorry if I'm wrong. It was really cool to see him breathe some more life into the Tony Soprano character. But it pains me to say that overall, I was not crazy about this movie. I really, really wanted to be crazy about this movie, but I just wasn't. It almost felt rushed to me for some reason. Sounds like somebody's trying to dig a hole through the floor. I'm underneath of my older son's bedroom, so he could be in there playing fucking jumping jacks for all I know. The movie felt like it was very slapped together, and it felt like they were trying to force feed you background stories of this is where this guy came from, and this is where that guy came from, and this is where this chick came from, and here's 1 minute of this person's backstory. That's kind of what it felt like to me. So it was nice to have a little more Sopranos in my life, but I don't want to say that I didn't like the movie, because I kind of did like the movie, but with that, I was still a bit let down by it. So if you're a Sopranos fan and you have not seen The Many Saints of Newark, I highly suggest you watch it, because you might feel quite differently than I did. And it was narrated by somebody in the original Sopranos cast that was killed in The Sopranos. So that was interesting too. All right, the next thing that I watched was streaming on Shudder. And although I don't own it, which is kind of the whole point of this whole YouTube video series for me, is trying to get through these damn movies that I bought, this one I watched streaming on Shudder, and it was definitely worth talking about. And that movie is The Sadness. If you guys have not seen The Sadness, wow, interesting movie. It is noted as being the most deprived zombie movie of all time, but it didn't feel so much like a zombie movie to me as it did an infected movie or an infection movie. These, zombies, or the infected in this movie, are sex-starved, bloodthirsty, I don't know, I guess I'm going to keep calling them zombies, and there's not really a whole lot of a point to walk away from watching this movie, or walk away with from watching this movie. It's just killing and raping and killing some more and raping some more and saying repulsive shit to people that are still actually not infected. That's another thing. These things, zombies, infected, pick one, These things will look at you and communicate with you and tell you what they're going to do to you and then do it. It's pretty crazy. It's actually really, really, really well made. A lot of really cool practical effects in this one. I thoroughly enjoyed this. There's some stuff in here that I'm not even going to talk about on this channel. Take my word for it. If you have this Shudder service and you have not watched The Sadness yet, in my opinion, it might even... If you're a horror fan, why the hell don't you have Shudder? It's like $6 a month, for God's sakes. And it's hundreds of fantastic horror movie and horror TV shows and documentaries. It's just $6 a month for all this, like, practically unlimited horror goodness. And this movie is one of the featured movies from there. Late last year, or maybe even the middle of last year, Rue Morgue put out a magazine with a picture of The Sadness on the cover and noted it as being the most depraved zombie movie of all time. Again, this didn't feel so much like zombies to me as much as it felt like insanity and infection. It had kind of the look of Train to Busan, and it had more of the feel to something along the lines of 28 Days Later to me. So it kind of felt like the love child of Train to Busan and 28 Days Later to me, my opinion. But it definitely didn't feel like zombies. Zombies don't talk to you unless you're in like Return of the Living Dead world.
Send more paramedics.
This was definitely very, very cool, in my opinion. I think that you should definitely watch The Sadness. If you're grossed out real freaking easy, maybe you should shy away from it. But under any other circumstance, if you're a horror movie fan, watch The Sadness. All right, next up, the third thing that I watched this week was a 2014 film that clearly I bought at Best Buy called The Pyramid. This was actually really well made too. This was not a first time watch for me. I watched that a couple of years ago when I bought it. Very, very cool. All right, so the quick rundown of this movie, they being the archaeologists, discover, look at that, I look like I slobbered all over myself. Archaeologists discover a pyramid, another pyramid. This one is three-sided, and it's buried beneath the surface of the sand. So it's outside, a few miles outside of Cairo. Don't remember how many miles. I almost said it was in Cairo. They make it a point in this movie to say that it is not in Cairo. So, a team of archaeologists or scientists or whatever go to this pyramid, and their intention is to send a rover inside of there with the hopes of eventually going in there and exploring the pyramid themselves. They are told that they have to pull out, that they have to be gone within 24 hours, and that's that. You guys can't go in, you got to get out. So, being the curious archaeologists that they are, they send the rover inside of this thing. Something happens to the rover. The rover, just so, you know, as it goes, costs about $2 million, and it's borrowed. It doesn't even belong to them, which shouldn't surprise anybody. Most people, civilians, don't have $2 million rovers. So they have to go in after the rover. Naturally, one guy can't go in. Two guys can't go in. So you have like the guy leading the whole thing up, his daughter, who is also a doctor, another girl who I don't remember who she is. You have the photographer's going to go in, and there's a fifth guy that I don't remember who he is either. He's like another, doesn't matter. He's somebody from Egypt, if I'm not mistaken. They go inside, and a whole lot of shit goes sideways in a pretty big hurry. This movie was pretty compelling. I really liked it a lot, and it holds your attention for the entirety of the film. Towards the end of the movie, it gets pretty intense. There is something inside. Of course there's something inside of there, because this movie would suck if there wasn't something inside of there. The thing that it is inside, well, there's several things in there, but the main thing that's inside of this pyramid is pretty badass. Pretty bleak ending, but that's pretty cool in most horror movies. You see a lot of that. I feel like you see the bleak ending is a real good way to put the ending in The Sadness too. So that's two pretty bleak endings at and The Sopranos. You know how all that shit turns out. So very downtrodden week this week, I guess. But The Pyramid. If you can come across The Pyramid, and you can probably find that streaming somewhere. Finding a physical copy of that at this point may not be real possible. Unless you go on Amazon, then it's probably very possible. But yeah, check that out. This was a really good movie. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And the last thing that I watched this week is an old movie called The Man with Two Lives. It is inside of this 50 movie, or was, well, still is, inside of this 50 movie collection that I have here. Don't remember what year it came out, but I can probably tell you real quick. 1942, starring Edward Norris, The Man with Two Lives. All right, so that movie was just over an hour long, and that almost felt like it had a little drop of Reanimator to it. Or I should say, Reanimator has stuck its fingers in The Man with Two Lives. So what we have here is you have a doctor who is, go figure, I say Reanimator, doctor is reanimating or bringing back to life things in his laboratory such as domestic pets, wild animals, and so forth. He is dead set on bringing a human back to life, a la Herbert West. So, they have a guy being executed. He was a mob boss being executed at midnight on this particular day. And this doctor's intention is to bring that guy's heart back to life. So, when he is preparing to do this, another character in the film, a much lesser character in the film, is the fiance of someone, of another main character. I don't remember these people's names, folks, and I don't know any of the actors. Pump the brakes, Jay. So this other guy who's a fiance of the daughter of one of the main characters gets into a car accident. And you get a real quick example that this is 1942 here. Instead of an ambulance coming and taking care of this gentleman, 4 guys shuffle out the door and then shuffle back in the door, carrying a dude that was just in a car accident. They bring him in, they put him on the couch. The doctor stands up and says he's gone. There's nothing else we can do now. So the guy who is the father of this dude said, yeah, he's the father. He's not the future father-in-law. He's the father of this guy, says that he wants his son to live. So lo and behold, you got the doctor here who reanimates things. He brings this guy back to life and somehow manages to get the soul of the mob boss being executed inside of this dude's son. So, this movie for me, it was okay. I'll put it that. It was as good as any 1942 black and white film with no effects and nobody in it that's only an hour and 7 minutes long. It was about as good as could be expected. I liked it. At no point did I have the desire to jump up and rip it out of my DVD player. But, I mean, how many are you actually going to watch that movie? Very few of you are going to watch that movie or bother looking it up, and I doubt you even have this in your collection. If I didn't have this, I wouldn't have that movie. My wife bought me 2 or 3 of those 50 movie sets a couple years ago for Christmas. Who makes this thing? Mill Creek makes those. All right, so yeah, if you find it, I mean, it's worth an hour of your life to check it out. I mean, it's. I like to tip my cap to the old black and white horror stuff, but to be quite honest with you, the premise sounds a lot more horror than the movie actually was. Nothing scary, no monsters, no blood. Horror is a stretch. Putting that, well, I guess it doesn't say horror, it says Tales of Terror. Looks like it's got Ed Gein or something on the cover of it. It was all right. So that's it. Those are the 4 movies I watched. The best movie that I watched this week is very close between The Sadness and The Pyramid, but I'll tell you what, man, the blood and guts gore hound in me, The Sadness was friggin' great, so I'm going to give it to The Sadness.
Yeah!
Like I said, I don't own it yet. I don't think anybody owns it yet, but when it comes out, I will own The Sadness, and that won't be something that sits on my shelf unwatched, because as soon as I get it, I will make it a point to watch that, because I need to see all the bonus features on that to find out who in the world it was with the mind to make that movie. So that was the best movie I saw. And the worst movie I saw up until this morning when I finished watching The Man with Two Lives, that was the worst movie. But the worst, least entertaining movie that I watched this week was definitely The Man with Two Lives. And I'm sure that that has 100% everything to do with when it was made. 1942, that's 60 years, 60, 70, 80 years ago that movie was made. And it felt exactly like a movie that was made 80 years ago. All right, so that's it for this week's video. I'm getting out of here. If you guys like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you really like this video and you've been enjoying my content up to this point, please do me a huge personal favor. Click that subscribe button and ring that bell. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Have a kick-ass day. Thank you for watching, folks. See you guys in the next one.